I was bedridden in the hospital after a car crash when a man in a suit entered and said, "Your daughter-in-law will destroy your family. Help your son while there's time." Then he left. A week later, my lawyer informed me a new document about my will had surfaced.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to that moment when everything changed. The fluorescent lights above my hospital bed hummed with that particular sound that makes you feel like you're trapped in a bad dream. My body ached in places I didn't know could ache. The steering wheel had left a bruise across my chest that the doctors said looked worse than it was. But everything felt worse than it was supposed to be lately. I couldn't remember the actual moment of impact. One second, I was driving home from the grocery store. The next, I was waking up here with tubes in my arms and that constant beeping of machines reminding me I was still alive. The nurse told me I'd been unconscious for almost 18 hours. Matthew had been here, she said. My son had sat beside my bed for 3 hours before Amanda convinced him to go home and rest. Of course she did. I stared at my hands resting on top of the thin hospital blanket. When did they get so old? The veins stood out like rivers on a map, the skin thin as tissue paper. These hands had graded thousands of papers, wiped away countless tears from scraped knees, baked birthday cakes every year without fail. These hands had held my husband's face the night he died, had stroked his hair until his breathing stopped. Now they trembled slightly even when I tried to hold them still. The flowers on the bedside table were already wilting. Someone had brought them yesterday, maybe the day before. Time felt strange here, stretching and compressing in ways that made me question everything. I reached over, ignoring the pull of the IV in my arm, and began reorganizing them. The yellow roses in the back, they still had life in them. The carnations were too far gone, but the daisies could be saved if I just moved them to where they'd catch the light from the window. My mother always said you could tell a lot about a person by how they treated flowers. Flowers are patient, she'd say. But they won't wait forever for someone to notice they're dying. I was adjusting the last daisy when the door opened. I assumed it was another nurse coming to check my vitals or adjust my medication. They came in and out so frequently I'd stopped looking up. But this time was different. The man who entered wore a charcoal gray suit that looked expensive, the kind Matthew used to wear before Amanda convinced him that his job at the community center wasn't ambitious enough. He was maybe in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of something important, something urgent. He didn't look at the chart at the foot of my bed. He didn't check any machines. He walked straight to my bedside and looked down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern? Warning? Both? Mrs. Barbara Henderson? His voice was low, careful. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak properly. He glanced at the door, then back at me. I don't have much time, and I know this will sound strange, but you need to listen carefully. He paused, seeming to gather his words. Your daughter-in-law will destroy your family. Help your son while there's still time. The words hit me like cold water. I tried to sit up, but my body protested. What? Who are you? But he was already moving toward the door. I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner. Watch the documents. Trust your instincts. And then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that seemed too final. I stared at that closed door for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Had that really happened? The medications they had me on were strong. I'd been having strange dreams, vivid ones where my late husband spoke to me, where I was young again and teaching my first class. But this felt different. This felt real. My hand shook as I reached for the notepad on the bedside table. The nurse had left it there along with a pen, probably thinking I might want to write down questions for the doctor. Instead, I grabbed a paper napkin from beneath the water pitcher. My fingers wrapped around the pen, and I began to draw. It had been years since I'd sketched anything. As a young teacher, I used to draw on the chalkboard to help my students understand concepts. Little illustrations of historical figures, maps with tiny details that made geography come alive. The skill was still there, buried under decades of dutiful routine. I drew the man's face as best as I could remember, the strong jaw, the concerned eyes, the way his hairline receded just slightly on the right side. Each line I added made him more real, less like a dream. The shape of his nose, the set of his shoulders. My hand remembered how to do this, even if my mind struggled to understand why I was doing it. When I finished, I held up the napkin and studied my work. It wasn't perfect, but it was him. Proof that he'd been here. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. I folded the napkin carefully and tucked it under my pillow, my heart beating faster than the machine said it should. The rest of that day passed in a blur of doctor visits and medication adjustments. Matthew came by briefly in the evening. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes that made him look older than his 38 years. He held my hand for a while, not saying much, just sitting there while the evening news played on the television mounted in the corner. "Mom, you scared us," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I scared myself." I tried to smile, but it felt wrong on my face. "Amanda wants to talk to you about maybe having someone help you at home. You know, just until you're fully recovered." There it was. The beginning of the end, perhaps, but I just nodded, too tired to fight, too confused by the stranger's visit to know what to fight for yet. After Matthew left, I pulled out the napkin again. In the dim light of the hospital room, the face I'd drawn seemed to be trying to tell me something. Those eyes held a warning, a message I was supposed to understand, but couldn't quite grasp. I fell asleep holding that napkin, my fingers curled around the edges like it was a lifeline. The week that followed was a strange kind of torture. They released me after 4 days, and Matthew and Amanda insisted I stay with them, just until you're steadier on your feet. Their house felt different now. Or maybe I was the one who was different. Amanda was attentive in that efficient way of hers. She brought me meals on a tray, adjusted my pillows, made sure I took my medications. But there was something in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Something calculating. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. The accident had shaken me up. That strange man's visit had planted seeds of suspicion where none should exist. Amanda had always been a little controlling, a little too concerned with appearances, but that didn't make her dangerous, did it? I was sitting in the guest room on the 7th day after the accident, trying to remember if I'd already taken my morning pills, or if I was supposed to take them, when my phone rang. Thomas Harrison. My lawyer's name appeared on the screen. "Barbara, I need to speak with you about something urgent." His voice carried that particular tone lawyers use when they're about to deliver bad news. "A document has surfaced. An amendment to your will." My blood went cold. What amendment? I haven't made any changes to my will in over 3 years. That's what concerns me. The document is dated 2 weeks before your accident. It bears your signature, but... He paused, and I could hear papers rustling on his end. "Barbara, I've known you for 15 years. This doesn't feel right to me." I looked down at my hands again, those old, trembling hands that had supposedly signed a document I had no memory of creating. The man in the gray suit's words echoed in my mind. "Watch the documents. Trust your instincts." "Thomas, I need you to do something for me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need you to get me a copy of that document, and I need you to not tell anyone, not even Matthew, that we've had this conversation." After I hung up, I sat there in the quiet guest room, surrounded by Amanda's carefully curated decor, and I understood with perfect clarity that the man in the hospital hadn't been a dream or a hallucination. He'd been a warning. And somewhere in this house, in this family I thought I knew, something was terribly, dangerously wrong. I just had to figure out what before it was too late. I pulled out the napkin from the pocket of my robe where I'd been keeping it. The face stared back at me, and for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel confused or fragile. I felt angry. Someone was trying to steal my life, my legacy, my family, but I was still here. I was still fighting, and I wasn't going to let them win. Not without a battle they'd never forget. The document arrived 3 days later in a plain manila envelope. Thomas had it delivered by courier, not trusting the mail, not trusting anything anymore. I waited until Amanda left for her yoga class before I opened it, my hands shaking so badly I nearly tore the pages. There it was, my signature at the bottom of a document I'd never seen before. The handwriting looked like mine almost, but the capital B in Barbara was wrong. I'd been signing my name for 72 years, and I always made that B with a little flourish at the top, a habit from my teaching days when I wanted my signature on report cards to look both professional and warm. This B was flat, lifeless, like someone had traced my signature but didn't understand the soul behind it. I sat at the small desk in the guest room, the papers spread out before me, and tried to remember those 2 weeks before the accident. What had I been doing? There was the garden club meeting on Tuesday, coffee with Patricia on Thursday morning. I'd gone to the grocery store on Friday, bought ingredients to make Matthew's favorite pot roast for Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner that never happened because Amanda had called that morning to cancel. "Matthew's not feeling well," she'd said. "Maybe next week." There was always a next week that never came. I heard the front door open downstairs. Amanda was back early. I quickly gathered the papers and slid them into the drawer, my heart pounding. Footsteps on the stairs, light and quick. I grabbed a magazine from the nightstand and pretended to read. "Barbara?" Amanda's voice was sweet, concerned. She appeared in the doorway wearing her yoga clothes, perfectly coordinated in soft purple. "I saw a car drop something off. Everything okay?" "Just some mail from my insurance company. Nothing important." She moved into the room, and I noticed how her eyes went to the desk, to the drawer where I'd hidden the papers. "You know, you really shouldn't be handling all that paperwork yourself. It must be so stressful. Matthew and I can take care of all those details for you. I'm managing fine." "Of course you are," She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I just worry about you getting confused. The doctor said after the accident there might be some memory issues. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Memory issues. She'd been saying that a lot lately. I'm going to make some tea. Would you like some? She was already leaving, not waiting for an answer. I waited until I heard her in the kitchen before I pulled out my phone. I needed to start documenting everything, but a phone could be checked, could be taken. I needed something physical, something I could hide. That afternoon, while Amanda was on a call in the home office, I took a walk to the drugstore 2 blocks away. She'd been discouraging me from going out alone, saying I wasn't steady enough yet, but I was tired of being trapped. I bought a small notebook, the kind with a leather cover that could be mistaken for a prayer book or diary. Nothing suspicious. I also bought a pack of pens and some stamps I didn't need, just to make it look like a normal errand. On the way back, I passed by my own house. They'd put it up for rent, Matthew had told me. Just until you're ready to live alone again, Mom. This way we have income from it and it won't sit empty. I stood on the sidewalk across the street, staring at the blue shutters I'd painted myself 5 years ago. The garden was overgrown, weeds starting to push through the flower beds I'd maintained so carefully. There was a for rent sign in the window with a number I didn't recognize. My house. My home for 34 years. And I was standing across the street like a stranger. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in bed with my new notebook and a small flashlight. On the first page, I wrote the date and time. Then I began documenting everything I could remember. June 8th, 11:47 p.m. Amanda mentioned memory issues again today. 3rd time this week. Doctor never said anything about memory problems to me. I flipped to a new page and drew a rough layout of my living room as I remembered it. The position of the furniture, the photos on the mantel. Then I drew what I'd seen through the window today. Everything was different. The couch moved to the opposite wall, the bookshelf gone entirely, and the photos, all those framed photos of family moments, had vanished. I labeled the drawing. Layout changes. Who authorized this? Where are the photos? Another page. Photos that are missing. Lucas's 5th birthday party, frame with blue balloons. Matthew's college graduation. My wedding picture with Henry. The photo of all of us at the lake house. The pen moved across the page, and with each word, the fog in my mind started to clear. This wasn't memory problems. This was erasure. I was being systematically erased from my own life. The next morning, I heard voices downstairs. Children's voices. My heart leaped. Lucas and Emma, my grandchildren. I hadn't seen them in almost 2 weeks. I got dressed quickly, ignoring the ache in my ribs that hadn't quite healed, and made my way to the stairs. I could hear Lucas's 8-year-old voice asking about cookies, Emma's giggles, and then Matthew saying something I couldn't make out. But I could make out Amanda's response, clear as a bell. Remember what we talked about. Grandma needs her rest. We're just picking up Daddy's laptop and then we're going to the park. I stood at the top of the stairs, one hand on the railing, and watched the scene unfold below me. Lucas spotted me first. Grandma! His face lit up, and he started toward the stairs. Lucas, wait. Amanda's hand shot out, catching his shoulder. Grandma is very tired today. The doctor said too much excitement isn't good for her recovery. But I want to show her my art project. I made a drawing of... You can show her another time, sweetie. Amanda's voice was gentle, patient, the kind you use with small children and the elderly. Why don't you go get in the car? Emma, you too. I watched my grandchildren's faces fall. Lucas's shoulders slumped as he trudged toward the front door. Emma, only 5 years old, looked back at me with those big brown eyes, and I saw something there that broke my heart. Confusion, like she couldn't understand why her grandmother didn't want to see her. Amanda, wait! My voice came out stronger than I expected. I'm feeling much better. The kids can stay. I'd love to see Lucas's drawing. Amanda turned to look up at me, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Annoyance? Anger? It was gone so fast I might have imagined it. Barbara, I know you think you're feeling better, but the doctor was very specific. You need rest, not chaos. You know how excited the kids get around you. We don't want you to have a relapse. Matthew appeared from the kitchen, laptop bag in hand. Mom, maybe Amanda's right. You still look pale. The kids can visit this weekend, okay? When you're stronger. This weekend. Just like last weekend, and the weekend before that. Always this weekend, which somehow never came. I gripped the railing harder, my knuckles white. Matthew, I'm fine. I just want to spend time with my grandchildren. We know you do, and you will. Amanda was already ushering the children toward the door, but right now they need to get to the park before it gets too crowded. Say bye to Grandma. Bye, Grandma, they called back, their voices small and disappointed. The door closed behind them, and I stood there on the stairs, listening to the car pull out of the driveway. The house fell silent again, that oppressive silence that had become my constant companion. I turned and walked back to the guest room, closed the door, and pulled out my notebook. My hand shook as I wrote, but I forced myself to document every detail. June 9th, 10:23 a.m. Amanda prevented the children from visiting with me. Said doctor ordered rest and no excitement. This is a lie. Dr. Peterson never said anything about avoiding my grandchildren. She used the word relapse, making Matthew afraid I'll get worse. Lucas wanted to show me his drawing. Emma looked at me like I didn't want to see her. How long has this been happening? How many times have they been turned away? I drew a small sketch of Lucas's disappointed face, Emma's confused expression. I needed to remember this. I needed to hold on to this moment, this feeling, because it was fuel. It was proof that something was deeply wrong. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured backyard. There was a swing set out there that Matthew had installed when Lucas was 3. I used to push both kids on those swings for hours, their laughter filling the air while Amanda watched from the patio, always watching, always present. Now I wondered what else she'd been doing while she watched. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Patricia, my friend from book club. Barbara? Finally. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. How are you feeling? The concern in her voice was genuine, and something inside me cracked. Patricia, It's complicated. Complicated? Honey, Amanda told everyone at book club that you had a severe concussion and couldn't have visitors. She said you specifically didn't want people to see you until you were better, but it's been 2 weeks, and I'm worried. My stomach dropped. She said what? That you didn't want visitors, that the recovery was going to be long and that you needed quiet. Barbara, that doesn't sound like you at all. When Richard broke his hip last year, you were at the hospital the very next day with magazines and crossword puzzles. I sat down on the bed, the phone pressed against my ear. Patricia, I never said I didn't want visitors. I would love to see you. I need to see you. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, honey. Something's not right, is it? No, I whispered. It's not. I'm coming over. Tomorrow. Is there a time when you'll be alone? We made plans for her to visit during Amanda's Pilates class, a sacred 2-hour window 3 times a week. After we hung up, I added another entry to my notebook. Amanda told my friends I don't want visitors, isolating me from support system. Patricia is coming tomorrow. Finally, someone who will listen. That evening, I pretended to be asleep when Amanda brought up my dinner tray. Through barely opened eyes, I watched her set it down on the dresser and move toward the desk. She opened the drawer where I'd hidden the legal documents. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. She pulled out the papers, unfolded them, and studied them for a long moment. Then she took out her phone and photographed each page. When she was done, she carefully refolded them and placed them back exactly as they'd been, closed the drawer silently, and left the room. I lay there in the darkness, my mind racing. She knew I'd seen the forged document. She was monitoring what I knew, what I was discovering. This wasn't just about control or money or whatever she hoped to gain. This was about keeping me confused, isolated, and helpless. But I had my notebook. I had Patricia coming tomorrow, and I had that napkin with the mystery man's face, still tucked in my robe pocket. I pulled it out now and looked at it in the dim light from the hallway. He'd said to trust my instincts. My instincts told me that everything I'd loved was being taken from me, piece by piece, memory by memory, relationship by relationship. But my instincts also told me that I was stronger than Amanda thought, smarter than she'd calculated, and that somewhere in the blur of medications and confusion, there was a woman who had spent 40 years teaching children to think critically, to question, to never accept things at face value. That woman was still here. She was angry, and she was starting to remember exactly who she was. I added one final note to my notebook before hiding it under my mattress. Remember, you taught hundreds of students to stand up to bullies. You taught them that the truth matters. You taught them to fight for what's right. Now it's time to remember those lessons yourself. Don't let her win. Don't let her steal everything. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back. Tomorrow, Patricia would come, and I would have an ally. Tomorrow, I would begin to unravel whatever web Amanda had spun around my life. But tonight, I let myself grieve. I grieved for the grandmother my grandchildren thought didn't want to see them. I grieved for the friendships Amanda had poisoned with her lies. I grieved for the home I could see but couldn't enter. And then I stopped grieving and started planning. Patricia arrived exactly at 10:15 a.m., 15 minutes after Amanda left for her Pilates class. I'd been watching from the window, my coat already on, my purse in hand. I opened the door before she could ring the bell. Oh, Barbara. She pulled me into a hug, and I felt something inside me break. You look so thin. Are they feeding you? We need to talk, I said, pulling her inside quickly. But not here. Can we go somewhere? Of course. Anywhere you want. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a booth at the back of Sterling's diner. A place Amanda would never set foot in because she considered it too common. I ordered coffee and toast I didn't want, just grateful to be out of that house, out of that room that felt more like a cage every day. Start from the beginning, Patricia said, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. So I did. I told her about the accident, about the man in the gray suit, about the forged document and the missing photos, and the grandchildren kept away from me. I told her about Amanda photographing the papers, about being told I had memory problems I didn't have. Patricia listened to everything, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Barbara, this is elder abuse. You know that, right? What she's doing, it has a name. The words hit me hard. Elder abuse. I'd read about it, seen news stories, always thought it happened to other people, vulnerable people, people who didn't have loving families. I need proof, I said. Real proof. Not just a notebook of observations. I need evidence that will make Matthew see what she's doing. Patricia nodded slowly. What about the man who came to see you? Have you figured out who he was? I pulled out the napkin with the drawing. Patricia studied it, her eyes widening. Barbara, this is really good. You always had such talent. She looked up at me. May I take a picture of this? I might be able to help identify him. After Patricia left, promising to do some investigating, I realized I had about 45 minutes before Amanda would be home. I asked the waitress to call me a taxi, and I gave the driver an address I hadn't spoken aloud in 2 weeks. My house. My real home. The taxi pulled up across the street and I asked him to wait. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at the place that held 34 years of my life. The morning sun caught the windows, and I could almost see myself inside, moving through the rooms, living a life that seemed like it belonged to someone else now. I was about to get back in the taxi when I noticed something. The living room curtain moved. Someone was inside. Without thinking, I crossed the street and tried the front door. Locked, but I still had my keys. They'd never asked for my keys back. Why would they? I was supposed to be too confused to use them. The door opened with a familiar click, and I stepped inside my own home like a thief. The smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke. I'd never allowed smoking in my house, not in 34 years. The walls I'd painted a warm cream were now gray with smoke residue. The hardwood floors I'd lovingly maintained were scuffed and dirty, but it was the emptiness that hurt most. Everything was gone. The furniture, the photos, the books, the plants, my mother's china cabinet, Henry's grandfather clock. Everything that made this house a home had been stripped away. The rooms were just empty boxes now, hollow and echoing. I walked through each room in a daze. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, empty. The dining room where we'd celebrated every holiday, empty. The bedroom where I'd slept beside my husband for 31 years, empty. I climbed the stairs, my hand on the railing that Henry had refinished himself. Matthew's old room had been my sewing room for the last decade. Empty. The guest room where my sister stayed when she visited. Empty. And then I reached my bedroom, and I understood. It wasn't empty. There were boxes everywhere. Expensive boxes with designer labels, clothes with tags still attached, scattered across the floor, shopping bags from stores I couldn't afford, and in the corner, a stack of papers that looked like bills, credit card statements with my name on them. I picked one up with shaking hands. $15,000 charged to a card I didn't even know I had. Another statement, $8,500. Another, $12,000. My house hadn't been rented out. It had been turned into Amanda's personal shopping warehouse and storage facility. I heard footsteps downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Not Amanda. Hello? A man's voice called out. Someone there? I froze, my heart pounding. I wasn't supposed to be here. In my own house, I wasn't supposed to be here. I'm calling the police, the voice said. You have 10 seconds to identify yourself. This is my house, I called back, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm Barbara Henderson. I own this property. The footsteps came up the stairs, and a large man appeared in the doorway. He was holding a phone, 911 already dialed but not yet called. Mrs. Henderson? But Mrs. Wilder said you were... He stopped, looking confused. She said you were in a care facility, that you wouldn't be coming back. Mrs. Wilder. Amanda's maiden name. What exactly did Mrs. Wilder tell you? He shifted uncomfortably. She said she was managing the property for you, that you had dementia and couldn't handle your affairs anymore. She hired me to do maintenance, keep an eye on things. She pays me cash, said it was easier that way. How long have you been doing this? About 3 months now. Look, lady, I don't want any trouble. Mrs. Wilder has been good to me. But if this is your house and you didn't authorize, take pictures, I said suddenly. With your phone, take pictures of everything. The shopping bags, the credit card statements, all of it. Why would I do that? Because in about an hour, my daughter-in-law is going to realize I've been here, and all of this evidence is going to disappear. Please, I need proof of what she's been doing. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he started taking pictures. We worked quickly, documenting every room, every box, every statement. He even photographed the "for rent" sign in the window. "The rent," I said. "The sign says to call for rates. Has anyone actually rented this place?" He shook his head. "No one. Mrs. Wilder said it was just for show, to make the neighbors think the house was being taken care of properly." When we were done, he sent all the photos to my email. I gave him my card with my real phone number and email address. "If she asks about this, if she knows I was here, please tell her. I need her to know I know." He nodded slowly. "Mrs. Henderson, for what it's worth, I don't feel right about this. The way she talked about you. Like you weren't even a real person anymore, just a problem to be managed." After I left, the taxi driver took me back to Matthew and Amanda's house. I arrived just 10 minutes before Amanda was due home. I went straight to the guest room and sat on the bed, my hands shaking as I pulled out my notebook. But before I could write anything, my eyes fell on the pill bottles on the dresser, the ones Amanda brought me every morning and evening, watching to make sure I swallowed them all. I picked up one bottle, medication for anxiety and sleep. I picked up another, something for blood pressure I didn't have problems with. A third bottle, a sedative. A fourth, something I didn't even recognize. With trembling hands, I photographed each bottle, then Googled the names on my phone. The first medication, prescribed for severe anxiety, and known to cause confusion and disorientation in elderly patients. The second, could cause dizziness, memory problems, and fatigue. The third, a powerful sedative that shouldn't be mixed with the first medication. The fourth, an antipsychotic typically used for dementia patients with severe behavioral issues. I wasn't taking medication to help me recover. I was being systematically drugged into compliance, into confusion, into the exact state Amanda had been telling everyone I was in. The sound of a car in the driveway made me shove the bottles back into place. I quickly lay down on the bed, closing my eyes, trying to slow my racing heart. I heard the front door open, Amanda's footsteps on the stairs quicker than usual. The bedroom door opened. "Barbara, are you awake?" I didn't move, keeping my breathing steady. She came closer. I could feel her standing over me, could smell her perfume. Then I felt something I didn't expect. She was checking my pulse, her fingers cold against my wrist. "Still strong," she muttered to herself. "How much longer is this going to take? How much longer is what going to take?" She moved away, and I heard her making a phone call, her voice too low for me to hear clearly, but I caught fragments. "Still resilient. Might need to increase. The house situation is handled." When she left, I lay there for a long time, processing what I'd learned. The medications weren't just to keep me compliant. They were to make me deteriorate faster, to make the lies Amanda was telling about my mental state become true. That evening, when Amanda brought my dinner tray with the neat row of pills beside the water glass, I did something I'd been too afraid to do before. "Amanda, I've been thinking. I'd like to schedule an appointment with my doctor, Dr. Peterson, just to check on my recovery progress." Her smile was perfect, concerned, loving. "Oh, Barbara, I don't think that's necessary yet. Dr. Peterson said we should wait at least another month before any follow-ups. We don't want to rush your recovery." "When did he say that? At your last appointment? Don't you remember?" She tilted her head, that perfect expression of gentle pity. "But that's okay. The memory issues are normal after a concussion. That's why you need to take your medication. It helps with the healing." I'd like to call him myself, just to confirm. Something flickered in her eyes. "Of course, but you know how busy his office is. It might be easier if I handle it. I'm already managing all your other medical needs. I'd prefer to do it myself." "Barbara," her voice took on a sharper edge, "I'm trying to help you. We all are. But you need to trust us. Trust me. I know what's best for your recovery." She picked up the pills and held them out. "Now, take your medication. Doctor's orders." I looked at those pills, knowing what they were really for, knowing what they were doing to me. But I also knew I couldn't let her know that I knew. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. So I took them from her hand, put them in my mouth, and pretended to swallow with a sip of water. I'd learned this trick in my teaching days when students tried to skip medication they didn't want to take. Hold the pills under your tongue, drink the water, wait until the person leaves. Amanda watched me for a moment longer, then smiled. "Good. I'll check on you later. Try to rest." The moment she left, I spit the pills into a tissue and flushed them down the toilet. Then I sat down and added everything to my notebook. The house, the shopping, the credit cards, the medications, all of it. But it was the final entry that made my hand shake. She asked how much longer this would take. She's waiting for something. Waiting for me to deteriorate completely? Waiting for me to die? Need to find out who the man in the suit is. He knew. Somehow he knew what she was doing. Need to understand the connection before it's too late. I pulled out the napkin with the drawing again, studying the face I'd sketched. Who was he? How did he know about Amanda's plans? And then it hit me. The way he'd looked at me in the hospital. Not just with concern, but with recognition. Like he knew me. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. 40 years of teaching. Hundreds of students. Thousands of faces. Which one was his? I was so focused on the drawing that I almost didn't hear my phone buzz with a text from Patricia. I think I found him. Can you video call? It's important. I looked at the time. Amanda would be making dinner. Matthew wouldn't be home for another hour. I had maybe 20 minutes. I accepted Patricia's video call, keeping the volume low. Barbara, I showed that drawing to my nephew, the one who works at the county clerk's office. He recognized him immediately. Patricia's face on the screen was excited, almost triumphant. His name is David Mitchell. He's a lawyer who specializes in elder law. David Mitchell. The name meant nothing to me. But here's the interesting part, Patricia continued. My nephew remembered the name because 20 years ago, David Mitchell was in the news. He was a troubled teenager, arrested for drug possession. The judge was going to send him to juvenile detention, but his high school teacher intervened, spoke on his behalf, said he deserved a second chance. The judge agreed to probation and community service instead. My heart started beating faster. Barbara, that teacher was you. You saved his life, and now, 20 years later, he's trying to save yours. The memory came flooding back. David Mitchell, a thin boy with angry eyes and a chip on his shoulder. He'd been in my 11th grade history class. Smart, but self-destructive. Dealing with an abusive home situation, I'd seen potential in him that no one else had seen. I remembered standing in that courtroom, telling the judge that this boy wasn't a criminal. He was a survivor who'd made a mistake. That he needed help, not punishment. That someone needed to believe in him. The judge had listened. David had gotten his second chance. And then he'd disappeared from my life, another student among thousands, but he hadn't forgotten. Patricia, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. He came back. After all these years, he came back to help me. He did more than that, Barbara. My nephew said David Mitchell has been investigating elder abuse cases for the past decade. He specializes in finding financial exploitation and guardianship fraud. If he came to see you, if he warned you, it's because he found something. Something bad. The pieces were falling into place. David hadn't just stumbled upon Amanda's plan. He'd been investigating her. Maybe she'd done this before. To someone else. Maybe that's how he found her. I need to talk to him, I said. Can your nephew get me his contact information? Already done. I'm texting it to you now. But Barbara, be careful. If Amanda finds out you're in contact with a lawyer, especially one who specializes in elder abuse, she might what? Try to have me declared incompetent faster? Increase my medication? Lock me in this room? My voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. Patricia, I'm already living in a nightmare. The only way out is through. After we hung up, I stared at the phone number Patricia had sent. David Mitchell. The troubled boy I'd fought for had grown into a man fighting for me. I wanted to call him immediately, but I heard Amanda's footsteps on the stairs. I quickly cleared my screen and put the phone in my pocket, lying back down on the bed. When Amanda entered to tell me dinner was ready, I saw her differently now. Not as my daughter-in-law, not even as an enemy, but as something far more dangerous. Someone who'd done this before, someone who was very good at it, and someone who thought I was too weak, too confused, too medicated to fight back. She was wrong. I had David Mitchell. I had Patricia. I had evidence mounting in my notebook and in my email. I had pills I was no longer taking. And most importantly, I had something Amanda had tried to destroy. Clarity. As I followed her downstairs for another dinner I'd pretend to eat, another evening I'd pretend to be confused and compliant. I thought about that scared boy in the courtroom 20 years ago. I'd told the judge he deserved a second chance at life. Now he was giving me a second chance at mine. And I wasn't going to waste it. I waited until Amanda's car pulled out of the driveway before I made my move. She'd said something about errands, her voice bright and false. I watched from the window until I couldn't see her taillights anymore. Then I called the number Patricia had given me. David Mitchell answered on the second ring. Mrs. Henderson. It's Barbara. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? When? Today. Now. Before she comes back. There was a pause. Riverside Park. The bench near the fountain. I can be there in 20 minutes. I took a taxi, watching the meter climb and not caring. This was worth more than money. This was worth everything. The park was quiet on a Tuesday morning. Mothers with strollers. An elderly couple walking hand in hand. Normal life, the kind I'd been locked away from. I found the bench and sat down. My hands were shaking, so I pulled out the new notebook I'd hidden in my purse. Not the one with all the evidence. A new one, empty except for what I'd written this morning. I needed to write something good, something true, something that wasn't about fear or suspicion or Amanda's crimes. The day Matthew was born, I wrote. November 12th. It snowed that morning, the first snow of the season. Henry drove me to the hospital, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. I remember the nurse had a kind smile. I remember holding my son for the first time and thinking that nothing would ever be the same. I was right. Mrs. Henderson? I looked up. David Mitchell stood in front of me, older than the angry boy I'd defended in court 20 years ago, but I could still see traces of him in his face. David. My voice broke a little. You came back. You saved my life, he said simply, sitting beside me. Did you really think I'd forget? I remembered that day in court. The judge ready to send him to juvenile detention. Me standing up, speaking about second chances, about potential, about the boy I saw beneath the anger. You were worth saving, I said. So are you. He pulled out a folder. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to understand what we're dealing with. Amanda isn't just cruel. She's done this before. He told me about Oregon, about an elderly woman who'd died 6 months after Amanda married her son, about the medications, the isolation, the deterioration that everyone believed was natural. She killed someone, I whispered. I can't prove it, but yes, I believe she did. And when I found out she'd married again, when I saw she had another elderly mother-in-law, I knew I had to warn you. Why didn't you just tell the police? Because she's careful. Everything she does looks legal. The doctors she uses, they're real doctors who prescribe real medications. The documents she forges, they're good forgeries. By the time anyone questions it, the victim is either dead or declared incompetent. There's no one left to tell the truth. I showed him my notebook, everything I'd documented. He read through it carefully. This is good, but we need more. We need medical proof that you've been drugged, that you're competent, that everything she said about you is a lie. How? I've arranged for you to see someone, Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in cases like yours. Will you come with me? The taxi ride took 15 minutes. Dr. Chen's office was small, private, in a building I'd never noticed before. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and steady hands. She examined me like I was a person, not a problem. She took blood. She asked me questions and actually listened to the answers. She had me do tests that I passed easily. When she was done, she looked at me seriously. Mrs. Henderson, the medications you've been taking should never have been prescribed together. You've essentially been poisoned. But you're cognitively sound. There's no reason for you to be under anyone's care. Can you prove it? I can document everything. But I need to ask you something. How far are you willing to go to stop her? I thought about the woman in Oregon who didn't get a chance to fight back. I thought about my grandchildren being kept away from me. I thought about Matthew being used without even knowing it. As far as it takes. After the appointment, David walked me to a small cafe. We sat in the back, and I watched him spread out papers on the table. What Amanda is doing, it has a name. Undue influence with financial exploitation. She's been doing it for years, moving from family to family. The pattern is always the same. Matthew doesn't know, does he? No. He thinks he's protecting you. That's the worst part. She's made him believe he's being a good son by keeping you isolated, by controlling your medications, by managing your affairs. He has no idea he's helping her destroy you. I looked down at my hands. Old hands. But they'd held my baby. They'd taught hundreds of students. They'd survived losing my husband. They weren't weak. What do I do now? Stop taking the medications. Let your mind clear completely. Start acting more competent. It will panic her. She'll have to move faster, and when she does, she'll make mistakes. That's when we'll have her. That's dangerous. Yes, but it's the only way. I thought about it. Every instinct told me to be careful. But every instinct also told me that careful hadn't worked. Careful had gotten me locked in a room, drugged into compliance, erased from my own life. All right, I said. I'll do it. When I got back to the house, Amanda was waiting. Her face was all concern, but her eyes were cold. Barbara, where have you been? You can't just leave without telling me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and let her see that I knew. I saw her, all of her, every lie. I went for a walk, I said clearly. I needed some air, and I felt perfectly fine. Something changed in her expression. Just for a second, the mask slipped. Of course you did, she said. But next time, please tell me. I worry about you. Do you? I met her eyes. Or do you worry about something else? She smiled, but it was different now, colder. I don't know what you mean, but she did know. And now she knew that I knew. That night, I lay in my bed and wrote in my notebook. Not about Amanda this time. About freedom. Today, I sat in a park and wrote about memories instead of fears. Today, I remembered that I'm not just a victim. I'm Barbara Henderson. Teacher. Mother. Fighter. And I'm not done yet. Tomorrow, Amanda would escalate. Tomorrow, things would get worse before they got better. But tomorrow, I would be ready. The change in Amanda was immediate. She watched me now, constantly, like a hawk circling prey that had started to run. Every time I spoke clearly, every time I remembered something I supposedly shouldn't, I could see the calculations behind her eyes. 3 days after my visit to Dr. Chen, I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard her on the phone in the next room. Her voice was low, controlled, but I could make out fragments. Not responding to the current dosage. Need something stronger. Yes, I understand the risks. I stood perfectly still, the kettle forgotten on the stove. She was talking to a doctor, or someone pretending to be one. That afternoon, when she brought me my pills, There were 2 new ones in the little cup, larger, different colors. The doctor adjusted your prescription, she said, her smile perfect. These will help with the memory issues that have been getting worse. But my memory wasn't getting worse. It was getting better. And we both knew it. I took the cup, brought it to my lips, and in that moment, I made a decision. I needed her to think her plan was working. I needed her to feel safe enough to make a mistake. So I pretended to swallow, kept the pills under my tongue, and 15 minutes later, I started to act confused. I called Amanda by my sister's name. I asked what year it was. I shuffled when I walked. The relief on her face was like watching a mask slip back into place. "Oh, Barbara," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You're having such a hard day. Let me help you back to bed." But as she guided me upstairs, I caught something in her expression. Not just relief, triumph. That night, I texted David from under my covers. The phone's brightness turned down to almost nothing. "She's increasing medication. Brought 2 new pills today. Didn't take them. Am pretending to get worse. What now?" His response came 5 minutes later. "Good. Keep pretending. I'm getting everything ready on my end. How is Matthew?" I thought about my son. He'd been so quiet lately. So tired. Sometimes I caught him looking at me with such sadness it broke my heart. "He doesn't know," I typed back. "He just thinks he's losing his mother. Soon he'll know the truth. Hold on, Barbara. Just a little longer." The next morning, I staged my performance carefully. I pretended to not recognize the bathroom. I wore my sweater backwards. I called Amanda nurse and asked when I could go home. She ate it up, immediately calling someone, probably Matthew. Her voice pitched perfectly between concern and exhaustion. "Yes, she's getting worse. Much worse. I think we need to start looking at facilities. I can't provide the level of care she needs anymore. It's breaking my heart, but we have to think about what's best for her." Facilities. She was moving to the next phase. Once I was in a nursing home, completely under her control, it would be over. I had maybe a week, 2 at most. That afternoon, while Amanda was on another phone call, I did something risky. I snuck into Matthew's home office and turned on his computer. I knew his password. It was Emma's birthday. Some things never change. I went through his files, his emails, looking for anything that might prove what Amanda had been doing. At first, there was nothing. Just work emails, family photos, normal life. Then I found a folder labeled Mom's Care, and my blood went cold. Inside were documents I'd never seen. Power of attorney papers with my signature. Only it wasn't my signature. Medical reports from doctors I'd never visited, claiming I had advanced dementia. Financial statements showing thousands of dollars spent on my care that I'd never received. And then I found the worst one. A document dated 3 weeks from now. Commitment papers for a long-term care facility. Already filled out. Already signed by Amanda, acting as my medical proxy. The date on the medical proxy was from 2 months ago, before the accident. She'd been planning this for months. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Amanda was coming back. I quickly forwarded all the documents to David's email, cleared the history, and shut down the computer. By the time Amanda reached the office, I was shuffling down the hallway, looking confused. "Barbara, what are you doing up here?" "I was looking for the bathroom," I said, letting my words slur slightly. "This house is so big. Too many rooms." She took my arm, her grip tight enough to hurt. "The bathroom is downstairs, remember? Let me help you." As she guided me down the stairs, her phone rang. She answered it, her voice immediately shifting to that concerned daughter-in-law tone. "Yes, Dr. Morrison. Thank you for calling back." A pause. "Yes. She's declined significantly in the past week. I really think we need to accelerate the timeline we discussed." Another pause. "This Friday? That soon?" I kept my face blank, but inside, my heart was racing. Friday. That was 3 days away. After she hung up, she settled me in the living room chair, tucking a blanket around me like I was a child. Or an invalid. "Barbara, honey, I need to talk to you about something. Matthew and I have been discussing your care, and we think it might be time to find you a place where you can get the help you need. A nice facility with nurses and doctors who can take care of you properly." "I don't want to leave," I said, making my voice small and frightened. It wasn't hard to sound scared. I was scared. "I know, sweetie, but you're not safe here anymore. You're confused all the time. What if you wandered outside and got lost? What if you fell? We just want you to be safe." Safe. That word again. She wielded it like a weapon. Matthew came home that evening looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders slumped like he was carrying weight too heavy to bear. Amanda met him at the door, her voice low, but I could hear every word. "She's getting worse. Today she didn't recognize the house. She thought I was a nurse at a hospital. Matthew, I'm so sorry, but I don't think we can wait any longer. Doctor, Morrison has an opening at Meadowbrook this Friday. It's one of the best facilities in the state. This Friday? That's so soon. I know, but he says spots rarely open up, and with her condition deteriorating so rapidly, we can't risk waiting. What if something happens to her? What if she hurts herself? I couldn't live with myself. There was a long silence. Then Matthew's voice broke in. Okay, if you think that's what's best for her. I sat in that chair, listening to my son agree to send me away, and I had to remind myself that he didn't know. He thought he was protecting me. He thought he was being a good son. Amanda had done this. She'd poisoned his mind as thoroughly as she'd tried to poison my body. After they went to bed, I waited an hour, then crept to the guest room closet where I'd been hiding my real notebook, the one with all the evidence. I added everything I'd discovered today. Then I pulled out my phone and called David. She's moving Friday, I whispered. I'm out of time. I know. I've been tracking the emails you sent. Barbara, we have enough. We have everything we need, but we need to catch her in the act, doing something Matthew can't deny. What do you mean? Tomorrow, stop pretending. Be yourself. Be completely lucid. Let her see that her medications haven't worked. She'll panic. She'll do something desperate. And when she does, I need you to record it. Record it? Your phone has a voice recorder. Tomorrow, when she tries to give you medication, when she talks to you, record everything. We need her voice. We need her to say something she can't take back. My hands were shaking. What if she hurts me? I'll be nearby. Patricia will be nearby. We won't let anything happen to you. But Barbara, this is the only way. She needs to show Matthew who she really is. Otherwise, he'll never believe it. Even with all the evidence, he'll find a way to explain it away. He loves her. He'll want to believe her. I thought about my son, about the man he used to be before Amanda, about the boy who cried when he accidentally stepped on a snail, about the teenager who defended kids who were bullied at school. That man was still in there. I just had to find a way to reach him. All right, I said. I'll do it. The next morning, I woke up and made a decision. No more pretending. No more playing the confused old woman. Today, Amanda would see that I knew everything. I got dressed in real clothes, not the shapeless house dress she'd been putting me in. I did my hair. I put on lipstick. When I looked in the mirror, I saw Barbara Henderson, not a victim, not a patient, just me. I walked downstairs at exactly 8 o'clock. Amanda was in the kitchen, preparing my breakfast tray. She turned when she heard me, and the shock on her face was almost worth everything I'd been through. Barbara? You're dressed. Yes. I thought it was time to stop living in pajamas. She recovered quickly, that fake smile sliding back into place. Of course, it's wonderful that you're feeling better today. But you know how these things go. Good days and bad days. Actually, I'm feeling quite clear. The clearest I've felt in weeks. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app, setting it on the counter between us. In fact, I think it's time we had an honest conversation, Amanda. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to my face. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I know about Oregon. I know about the woman who died 6 months after you married her son. I know about the medications you've been giving me. I know about the commitment papers you've filed for Friday. All the blood drained from her face. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Pure hate. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I have medical documentation. I have the forged signatures. I have emails and bills and statements. I have everything, Amanda. And so does my lawyer. She moved toward me, and I saw something dangerous in her eyes. Even if that's true, who's going to believe you? You're a confused old woman with dementia. I have doctor's reports. I have witnesses who've seen you deteriorate. Matthew will never believe you over me. Won't he? I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. You've underestimated him. You've underestimated what a son's love really means. Love? She laughed, bitter and cold. Love is what made this so easy. He loves his mother so much that he'll do anything to protect her, even lock her away, even let me have complete control. Love made him blind. And what about your love? Do you feel anything at all? Or is it all just an act? Her smile was cruel. Everything is an act, Barbara. The concerned daughter-in-law, the devoted wife, the caring person who just wants what's best. People see what they want to see. Matthew wanted to see a woman who loved his mother, so that's what I showed him. While you poisoned me. While I helped you along. You were going to die eventually anyway. I just accelerated the process. Like I did with that woman in Oregon. Like I'll do again, with someone else, when this is over. The recording was still running, every word captured, every confession documented. It's over now, I said quietly. Matthew needs to hear this. Matthew isn't here, he's at work. And by the time he gets home, you'll be so confused, so medicated, you won't even remember this conversation. In fact, I think you're having one of your episodes right now. Getting paranoid, saying crazy things. I'll have to call Dr. Morrison, see if we can move your commitment to today instead of Friday. She reached for the pill bottles on the counter. Now, you're going to take your medication like a good patient, all of it, and then you're going to go lie down. No, she laughed. You don't have a choice. Actually, she does. We both turned. Matthew stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes fixed on Amanda. "Matthew?" Amanda's voice changed instantly, became soft and worried. "Thank God you're here. Your mother is having an episode. She's been saying the most terrible things. I heard." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I heard everything. My meeting was canceled. I came home to check on Mom. I've been standing in the hallway for the past 5 minutes, listening to you confess to trying to kill my mother." Amanda's mask finally shattered completely. "Matthew, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." He walked past her to me, took my hand. His fingers were cold. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm okay now," I said, and started to cry. "I'm okay?" He pulled me into a hug, and I felt him shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have known." "She's very good at hiding," I whispered. "You couldn't have known." Behind us, Amanda was backing toward the door, but David Mitchell stepped into the kitchen, blocking her exit. Behind him, 2 police officers. "Amanda Wilder," one of them said, "you're under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and attempted murder." As they handcuffed her, she looked at me one last time, not with hate anymore, with something else, disbelief. "You were supposed to be easy," she said, "just another confused old woman. How did you—" "I had something you never counted on," I said. "I had people who believed in me, and I believed in myself." They led her away, and suddenly the kitchen was quiet except for Matthew's ragged breathing. "Mom, the things she said, the things she did. How do I—" He couldn't finish. "One day at a time," I said. "We heal one day at a time." David approached, his eyes kind. "Mrs. Henderson, we're going to need you to come down to the station, give an official statement. But first, maybe you should rest." "No," I said firmly. "No more resting. No more being treated like I'm fragile. I want to give my statement now. I want everything on record. I want to make sure she can never do this to anyone else." Matthew drove me to the police station. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? His wife had tried to kill his mother. His whole marriage had been a lie. But as we pulled into the parking lot, he reached over and took my hand. "I'm going to make this right," he said. "I don't know how, but I will." "You already are," I told him. "You believed me. When it mattered, you believed me. That's all I needed." That night, after hours of statements and questions and paperwork, Matthew and I sat in my old house, the one Amanda had stripped and used and violated. It was still mostly empty, but it was mine. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor, eating out of the box like we used to do when he was a kid and his father worked late. "I'm going to fix this place up," he said. "Put your furniture back, repaint, make it home again. We'll do it together," I said. "You, me, and the kids. They should know where their grandmother really lives." He started crying then, really crying, and I held him like I did when he was small. "I almost lost you," he sobbed. "I almost let her, but you didn't. I'm here. I'm okay. We're okay." Later, after Matthew left and I was alone in my empty house, I pulled out my notebook, the new one, the one with memories instead of fears. "Today I won," I wrote. "Not because I destroyed Amanda, but because I saved myself. I remembered who I was. I found my strength. I protected my family. And I learned that sometimes the people you save come back to save you." I thought about David, about that scared boy in the courtroom who'd grown into the man who'd saved my life, about Patricia, who'd believed me when others might have doubted, about Matthew, who'd loved me enough to hear the truth even when it destroyed everything he thought he knew. "I'm 72 years old," I wrote, "and today, I started living again." 6 months later, I stood in my living room and barely recognized it. The walls were the warm cream color I'd chosen years ago, freshly painted by Matthew and me over several weekends. My furniture was back, arranged exactly as I remembered. The photos were on the mantel again, restored to their rightful places. But there were new photos too. Pictures of Matthew and me painting together, both covered in cream-colored splatters. Lucas and Emma helping to plant new flowers in the garden. Patricia and me at the cafe where we now met every Tuesday. And one photo that meant more than all the others. Me and David Mitchell at the courthouse the day Amanda was sentenced. 3 years in prison, with mandatory restitution and a permanent ban from working in healthcare or elder services. It wasn't enough, maybe, but it was something. More importantly, her crimes were on record now. Her pattern was broken. She couldn't hurt anyone else. The doorbell rang. I knew who it would be. Who? Every Sunday at 3 o'clock, like clockwork. I opened the door to find Matthew, Lucas, and Emma. My son looked healthier now, the weight of guilt slowly lifting from his shoulders. We'd been going to therapy together, working through everything. It was hard. Some days were harder than others. But we were doing it together. "Grandma," Emma launched herself at me, and I caught her, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Hi, sweetheart. Did you bring the seeds we talked about? She held up a small paper bag triumphantly. Marigolds. You said they were Papa Henry's favorite. They were. He'd be so happy to know you're helping me plant them. Lucas hung back a little, the way 8-year-old boys do when they're trying to be grown up. But I saw the way his eyes lit up when he looked at me. I brought my drawing, Grandma, the one you asked me to make. Show me, I said, leading them all into the kitchen where I'd set up art supplies on the table. Lucas carefully unrolled a piece of paper. It was a drawing of our family. Not the family Amanda had tried to create, controlled and staged, but the real one. Me and Matthew, Lucas and Emma. Patricia was in it too, and David, and even Henry, drawn as an angel in the corner because that's how Lucas understood loss. It's perfect, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Absolutely perfect. Matthew stood in the doorway, watching us. Mom, can we talk? Just for a minute? I nodded, and we stepped out onto the back porch while the kids started painting at the kitchen table. I've been thinking, Matthew said, staring out at the garden we'd replanted together, about what Dr. Chen said in therapy last week, about forgiveness. Matthew, let me finish. I know you've forgiven me. You tell me every time I apologize, but I need to say something else. He turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I'm grateful. Grateful. For everything. For the way you fought back. For being strong enough to save yourself when I couldn't save you. For giving me a second chance to be the son you deserve. His voice broke. You could have blamed me. You could have cut me out of your life. But instead, you welcomed me back. You let me help fix what I helped break. I took his hands in mine. Matthew, do you remember what I used to tell you when you were little and made a mistake? That everyone deserves a second chance to do better. And do you remember what else I said? He smiled through his tears. That love means believing in people even when they can't believe in themselves. You were manipulated by someone who was very good at manipulation. But when it mattered, when you heard the truth, you believed me. You stood by me. That's what I'll remember. We stood there for a moment, and then Matthew pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. I found this in the house. It was in a drawer Amanda had packed away. I think she was planning to sell it. He opened the box and I gasped. My mother's ring, the one I'd thought was lost forever. I had it cleaned and resized, Matthew said. It should fit now. He slipped it onto my finger, and I stared at the small diamond catching the afternoon light. My mother had worn this ring every day of her life, and now it was back where it belonged. Thank you, I whispered. From the kitchen came Lucas's voice. Dad, Grandma, come see what we made. We went back inside to find the table covered in paintings. Emma had painted flowers, big and colorful and full of joy. Lucas had painted our house, with all of us standing in front of it, holding hands. For your memory wall, Lucas said, so you can remember today. My memory wall. It had been Patricia's idea. A wall in my hallway where I hung memories, good ones, new ones, photos and drawings and pressed flowers and ticket stubs from movies. A visual reminder that my life wasn't defined by what Amanda had tried to take, but by what I'd built after. They're beautiful, I said, hugging both kids. We'll hang them up right now. Later, after we'd planted the marigolds and hung the paintings and eaten the cookies I'd baked that morning, after Matthew and the kids had gone home with promises to return next Sunday, I sat alone in my house. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I pulled out my notebook, the one I'd been keeping since everything happened. Not the evidence notebook. That was locked away at David's office, preserved as part of the legal record. This was my new one, my memory book. I opened to a blank page and began to write. 6 months ago, I was a prisoner in my own son's house. I was drugged, isolated, erased. Someone tried to steal not just my money or my home, but my very identity. They tried to make me forget who I was. But I didn't forget. Today, Matthew and I planted Henry's favorite flowers while our grandchildren painted pictures of our family. Today, I wore my mother's ring. Today, I lived in my own home, made my own choices, remembered my own memories. Amanda tried to steal my life. Instead, she taught me how precious it is. There was a knock at the door. I checked the time. 5 o'clock, right on schedule. I opened the door to find David Mitchell standing there with takeout bags from the Thai place we both loved. I brought dinner, he said. Hope you're hungry. Starving, I said, stepping aside to let him in. This had become our routine over the past few months. Sunday dinner after Matthew and the kids left. Sometimes we talked about the case, about the other victims David was helping. Sometimes we talked about the past, about that day in court 20 years ago. Sometimes we just ate and watched old movies. Today, we sat on my porch as the sun set, eating pad thai and spring rolls. I got a call from the prosecutor, David said. Amanda's attorney is filing an appeal. Will it work? No. The evidence is too strong, and her confession was recorded. But it means you might have to testify again. I thought about facing her in court, about looking her in the eye and telling my story one more time. 6 months ago, the thought would have terrified me. Now I just felt tired. If I need to testify, I will. She doesn't scare me anymore. You're remarkable, you know that? I laughed. I'm just stubborn. There's a difference. No, he said seriously. 20 years ago, you stood up in a courtroom and told a judge that a troubled kid deserved a second chance. Everyone else had given up on me. My own mother had given up. But you saw something in me that no one else saw. You believed in me. You were worth believing in. And so were you. When Amanda had everyone convinced you were losing your mind, you believed in yourself. You fought back. You saved not just your own life, but probably dozens of others. That's not stubbornness, Barbara. That's courage. I reached over and took his hand. We saved each other. That's what people who care about each other do. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn pink and gold. I started a new project, David said eventually. A foundation, to help other elderly people who are being abused or exploited. Legal aid, medical advocacy, safe housing, everything I wish had been available sooner. That's wonderful. I want to name it after you, the Barbara Henderson Foundation. I shook my head. No, name it after your mother. Or that woman in Oregon. Name it after someone who didn't make it. I did. You made it because you're strong. I made it because I got lucky. Because you came to warn me. Because Patricia believed me. Because Matthew eventually listened. So many others don't get that lucky. David nodded slowly. All right, but I want you on the board. I want your wisdom. Your experience. Will you do it? I thought about all those people out there. Trapped like I'd been trapped. Confused. Isolated. Convinced they were losing their minds while someone stole their lives. Yes, I said. I'll do it. The next morning, I woke early and made myself coffee. Real coffee. Strong and black. The way I liked it. Not the weak, oversweetened version Amanda used to make, claiming it was better for my digestion. I took my cup out to the garden and sat on the bench Matthew had built. The marigolds we'd planted yesterday were already starting to settle into the soil. In a few weeks, they'd bloom, bright and cheerful, just like Henry remembered them. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Book club tonight? We're reading the new mystery you recommended. I smiled. Book club? I'd missed so many meetings while Amanda had me under her control, telling everyone I wasn't well enough for visitors. Now I went every week. I'll be there, I typed back. Should I bring the chocolate cookies? Always. Another text, this one from Matthew. Mom, Emma wants to know if she can come over after school tomorrow. She misses you. Of course, I'll make hot chocolate. I sat there, watching the morning sun light up the garden, holding my phone with its messages from people who loved me, wearing my mother's ring, drinking coffee exactly how I liked it. This was my life. Not the one Amanda had tried to give me, medicated and controlled and slowly dying. Not even the one I'd had before. Comfortable, but maybe a little too quiet, a little too small. This was something new, something I'd built from the ruins of what she'd tried to destroy. I pulled out my notebook and turned to a fresh page, but instead of writing, I started to draw. The garden, the house, the marigolds that would soon bloom. And then I drew faces. Matthew, the kids, Patricia, David, Henry, from memory. The way he looked when we first fell in love. I drew myself last, not as I'd been in that hospital bed, confused and frightened. Not as I'd been in that guest room, drugged and isolated, but as I was now, sitting in my garden, surrounded by love, holding a cup of coffee and a notebook full of memories no one could ever steal. When I finished, I wrote beneath the drawing, My name is Barbara Henderson. I am 72 years old. I was a teacher for 40 years. I am a mother and a grandmother. I am a survivor and a fighter. I am loved and I love in return. Someone tried to erase me, but I wrote myself back into existence. One memory at a time, one day at a time, one moment of courage at a time. These are my memories. These are my days. This is my life, and it is beautiful. That afternoon, I started a new tradition. I called it the Memory Club. It met in the park, at the same bench where David and I had reunited. Every Tuesday and Thursday, a group of elderly people gathered to share stories, to write down memories, to remind each other that we mattered, that we were more than our age or our frailty, or what others thought we should be. The first meeting, it was just me and 3 others. People Patricia had found, people David knew, people who'd been isolated or forgotten or made to feel invisible. We sat in a circle, and I asked each person to share one memory they didn't want to lose. One moment that defined who they were. Mrs. Chen talked about the day she came to America, 50 years ago, carrying nothing but a suitcase and hope. Mr. Williams described teaching his daughter to ride a bike, the joy on her face when she finally balanced on her own. Sarah Martinez remembered her wedding day, dancing with her husband under a sky full of stars, and I told them about the day Matthew was born, about holding my son for the first time, and knowing that everything had changed, that I would never be the same, that love had made me bigger and braver than I'd ever been alone. Write it down, I told them, all of it, every memory, every moment. Because no one can take our memories unless we let them. No one can erase us unless we forget who we are. We wrote together as the sun moved across the sky. And when we were done, I looked around at these faces, these beautiful, lined, lived-in faces, and I felt something I hadn't felt in so long, purpose. 6 months ago, I was fighting to survive. Now I was living to help others do the same. That evening, as I locked up my house and turned off the lights, I paused in the hallway by my memory wall. All those photos, all those drawings, all those moments preserved and honored. But the newest addition was the drawing I'd made this morning, me in my garden, surrounded by everything I'd reclaimed. I touched it gently, and I whispered to myself, to Henry, to everyone who'd believed in me, thank you for teaching me that memories aren't just about the past, they're about the future too. They're about who we choose to become, even after someone tries to destroy us. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, my real bedroom in my real house, and I fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about the memory club meeting on Thursday, about Sunday dinner with Matthew and the kids, about the foundation David and I would build together, about all the mornings I'd wake up in this house, drink my coffee exactly how I liked it, and remember that I was Barbara Henderson, teacher, mother, grandmother, survivor, not because someone allowed me to be, but because I chose it, because I remembered. And because, in the end, the memories that matter most are the ones we create after someone tries to take everything away. Those are the memories that prove we're still here, still fighting, still living, still loving, still whole. The marigolds would bloom soon, and I would be here to see them.